Hello to everybody joining us on our very first EX Space webinar, which is super exciting. I'm really excited about this webinar. Hopefully you will be too. See a few names I recognise on there. So hello to people that that I know and that Lee knows. As ever, we'll just give it a couple of minutes to let people join. Often is the way people are joining from different meetings. So we won't get started at 1 o'clock on the dot. We'll give it another minute or two. So I'll just carry on chatting whilst people join us. But yeah, as I said, it's the first EX Space webinar today. So we're very excited, aren't we, Lee?
Let me unmute. Yeah, absolutely. Really looking forward to it, and a cracking turnout today from right across the world, which is brilliant.
Yeah, we have got hopefully, well, it looks like we've got quite a few joining us already. Yeah, we've got over 30 already. So we've got well over 100 registered as well. So if you can put yourselves on mute, that would be great. If you want to show your faces, it's always nice to see people, but I get it. You might be eating lunch, or you might be, various places that you think, well, I don't want to show where I'm at today. So that's fine. No judgment at all. But it's always nice to see real people, isn't it? And we're all about, human and empathy at the EX Space. It's always nice to see real life people. We're going to be sharing a few slides today, just really giving you I guess the headlines from the research that we conducted kind of at the end of last year. You'll all be getting a copy of the white paper to download and go through it in a lot more detail. And you'll also get a recording of today as well. And if you want the slides, you can have the slides as well. That's absolutely fine. But everything we're going to talk about in the slides will be in the white paper as well. So it should all be in there. So as I said, just the summary today to share with you, I guess, the key highlights from the research. Also delighted to be joined by two brilliant people who we've worked with in the past and who contributed to the research. So I've got Emily Hayes from News UK and Alison Ramsey from BAE Systems, who very kindly joined us today, and they're going to answer some questions. So you'll also get to talk to or ask questions of some real life practitioners, which is always good when you're in-house. You're thinking, but I want to speak to the people actually doing the job that I'm doing. So get to hopefully ask them some questions today as well. I'll ask some questions and you'll get to hopefully ask some questions as well. So I think we'll get started because we're just past 3. So as I said, welcome to the session today. Absolutely delighted for you all to be here. Thanks for signing up. Thanks for being here. It is the first of our EX Space webinars today. So myself, Emma Bridger and Lee Smith, we are the co-founders of the EX Space. We'll tell you a bit more about the EX Space as we go through the webinar today. But in summary, we are a learning-led, we're going to be a learning-led, membership-based community. A space where anybody working in this kind of sometimes crazy field of employee experience and engagement can come together, talk, share, collaborate, can go through an accredited certified training program. So you can actually say, I'm an expert in this stuff. And I think it's the first of its kind in the world, which is really exciting. There'll be a community that's going to be a really key part of this. I've spent a lot of time over the last sort of 3 years with my other Business People Lab, kind of doing a little bit of like EX kind of dating or engagement dating, just kind of introducing different practitioners to each other. You were sort of saying, I feel like I'm on my own. I want to talk to someone that's going through the same things I'm going through. So we're going to create a space so that you can all come together and actually meet each other and talk and share and collaborate. So Lee, anything you want to chip in there while I bring the slides up? Anything I've forgotten to say there?
I think you've covered it all, Em. I think it's please, after this, download the white paper. We've captured everything we're going to talk about here in quite a lot of detail. The white paper itself is about 25 pages long, so this is really only going to whet the appetite over the next hour or so. Well, under an hour now, and but yeah, get stuck in. Please get stuck into the white paper. Give us your thoughts. It's very much a starting point for this conversation from our perspective.
Absolutely. Awesome. So let's get started there. Let's kind of lift the lid on what these EX archetypes are that we're talking about. So what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about the backdrop, you know, why we did this research, you know, and this world we're operating in at the moment. I'm going to touch on our view of EX and engagement as well. And then we're going to get into the interesting bit, which is introducing the 4 archetypes and how we arrived at them and what we mean by them. Then I'm going to go and speak to Alison and Emily and just get some thoughts and some views from them. As I said, they both contributed to the research. So, you know, got some really good experience and ideas to share. And both of them and their organizations really are, you know, I would say pioneers of EX and doing some really cutting edge work. So well worth listening to what they've got to say. And then we're going to talk about what we call the core strengths and skills that came out of our research for those high performing practitioners. You know, what strengths and skills have helped them to get to where they are. And then there'll be some time for you to ask questions as well. So that's what we're going to be covering today. Just to get us started though, as I said, the EX space is this new learning-led membership-based community. We're launching it in late spring. I've kind of covered this already, but we are really excited about the potential of this to kind of really professionalize the world we work in and really take it to the next level. As I said, it's going to be a space to bring this community together for the first time, not just EX, but engagement, join the dots between those 2 areas. It's going to be multidisciplinary, and it's really going to be a place where you know you can get everything you need to help you to push things forward in your organization when it comes to employee experience. So we're really excited about this. We've been prototyping with a bunch of kind of like friends and family, I suppose, and we've had really good feedback, and overwhelmingly people have said, oh my goodness, yeah, we really need this. This is going to be great. So we are deep in kind of content and learning development mode at the moment. So we're going to be launching kind of late spring. So if you haven't done already, sign up to find out what's going on there. And also just a quick plug, we are looking for case studies to feature on there. We've obviously got a load from the work that we do, which is great, but we want to kind of really spread that a lot wider, that net a lot wider, and hear about, you know, great work and great companies that we haven't come across yet. So if you think you've got a good story to tell, let us know. So just really quickly then, the research. This is, I guess, kind of phase 1 of the research, very much a qualitative phase of research. As I said, we conducted this sort of end of last year, beginning of this year. And we did interviews with around what we call 30 EX pioneers. So people that we've come across either in the work that we've done at People Lab or the work that Lee's done in the past, or you know, just maybe you've judged awards that they've entered, or just seen stuff they're doing and kind of pulled them out as what we believe, you know, are pioneers of employee experience. And they were predominantly in-house practitioners. And what we wanted to do was really understand when practitioners are excelling in this discipline, what is it they're doing differently? What helps them to get good at this? What is required to be a truly outstanding EX professional? And we wanted to get under the skin of what that means and what they do. And the idea was to kind of firstly figure that out, but secondly then use that to help develop learning. So it's really easy to kind of, you know, sit in our office and come up with what we think is a great learning program. And, you know, we've done a lot of learning over the years. You know, EX by Design course that I run with Belinda Ganaway has gone down really well. And I've done master classes, but we really wanted to kind of actually live our brand, which is all about, you know, empathy and human-centered design, and say, what is it that practitioners really need? And, you know, really, luckily, and I guess a bit of a kind of phew moment was finding out that actually the research has really helped us to get clear on what that looks like and what that's going to be. So that will be featured on the site in the coming months. But I'm going to hand over to Lee now, just to give you a little bit around the backdrop, I guess, and why we did the research and what's happening currently in the world of EX and engagement. And he's also going to talk to you a little bit about our view on, you know, definitions and how we talk about EX and engagement as well. So Lee, I'll hand over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Emma. So yeah, really thinking about the backdrop and the context for this, you know, obviously we have come through a period really of quite momentous change over the last 3 years. The pandemic, of course, was the big game changer, but in many ways it just accelerated change that was already underway. It's only accelerated the adoption of technology as those organizations rushed rushed out technologies to be able to communicate quickly and consistently with everyone. But it brought in a whole host of other changes. You see now battles over, still the ongoing battle over where people work, work from home, hybrid, in the office. Only this week, companies like Amazon dragging people back into the office. So still very much in the headlines. We've got experiments in terms of when we work, the big 4-day week experiment here in the UK, again reported yesterday. Very positive signs from that. So lots of change going on. You look at the backdrop, there's talk about the Great Resignation. We know that, we've heard that term. Quiet quitting, who's heard that one? I hate the term, but you know what it's discussing and what it's pinpointing is a lack of engagement. The quiet quitting is simply a symptom of disengagement in the workplace. We saw engagement levels drop during the pandemic. They've crept back up a little bit, but they've plateaued out in the months since then. So lots of issues going on, industrial unrest, certainly for those of us in the UK, we're seeing and hearing that every day. And we're hearing lots of stories about burnout and mental health issues and all sorts of things. So a real backdrop of change. And I think, you know, whether you see that as a fundamental shift in the relationship between employer and employee or not, what is very clear is that things are different. There's something quite, we're in a new world, a brave new world, post-pandemic. The world of work is changing. We need to adapt and we need to change how we work. But this new normal is characterized really at the moment by distrust, I would say, disengagement and discontent. You know, employees are expecting and wanting more from their employees. Large organizations, small organizations, any employer needs to respond to that quickly. So what we're seeing is organizations now, I think, realizing that, you know, the employee's experience at work is everything, and those experiences can no longer be left to chance. And that's really what EX is all about. It's about designing those experiences in a really clear way. So EX is about to explode. You know, if I look back over the last few months, there have been numerous, particularly HR-led studies that have come out, predictions of the year ahead or the next few years, and what's going to be a big strategic priority for people professionals. And employee experience has been at the very top of most of those. Gartner, to name just one example. A couple of weeks ago, LinkedIn named the 25 hottest jobs, so the newly emerging, fast-growing jobs. And the new role of EX manager was named number 5 in the US, the first time that's ever featured. Interestingly, it didn't feature in the UK list. But again, we're seeing organizations create new roles. They're badging those roles EX. And part of this research was to get under the skin of what those roles do. Are the different types of roles? And the answer is a big resounding yes. So it's clear that EX has come of age. And for us, we and many others are really saying this is the start of what we're calling the EX era. 2023 is the start of something new. And the EX space that we're building here is very much designed to be part of that. Next slide, Emma. As we got talking to our interviewees, what became very clear was this sense that it's a little bit like the Wild West out there, hence the visual metaphor there. So EX in some ways is a bit like internal comms as a profession was perhaps 20 years ago. There's a sense from those practitioners that they're very much the early pioneers, they're the trailblazers in this brave new world. They're out there kind of mapping the territory, and they're trying to build bridges with the various tribes, and often having battles with those various tribes and functions that they need to work with within the organization. It's lonely, it's a little bit lawless. There are no clear definitions of what employee experience is, a surefire sign of an immature discipline. There's no obvious home for it functionally. There's no clarity around what people should be doing around the roles. There's no consistent toolkit. So very much a sense that we're in this sort of brave new world. And I think that was very much the backdrop for this research. We wanted to uncover what those early trailblazers are doing, what they're seeing and hearing, and with our research, try and provide a little bit more clarity and guidance, almost the start of a map to help them navigate this brave new world. Next slide, Em. Thank you. So before we get into the archetypes themselves, let's just recap on EX and what it is, and particularly our view here at the EX space. Next slide, Em. Cheers. So this model, many of you will have seen it. I think it's from the book Employee Experience by Design that you can see in the bottom left corner there, which is a great book, highly recommended. I'm not on commission, but I'm sure Emma will thank me. It's our very own Emma Bridger was the author of that, together with Belinda Ganaway. It's available on Amazon. A cracking read, particularly if you're in the archetype we'll talk about later, which is the kind of architect or designer. It's very much about using design skills to create employee experiences. And just briefly, if you look at that continuum at the top, we talk about on the one side intentional EX, so this sense of us designing and intentionally crafting experiences for people. There's that, I hate the phrase, but the hygiene stuff. Okay, so pay and rations, making sure that people get paid on the right time at the right time, making sure that people are paid appropriately and fairly. That's very big at the moment, and also making sure people have the right tools for the job. We can design that stuff. We can make sure that's really effective as organizations. That stuff tends to be owned by HR, by facilities, by IT. Then we talk about the life cycle EX. This is the employee journey. So this can be everything from the recruitment process, through to onboarding and induction, through to the performance management, right the way through to exit. Those big moments that matter, the big set piece experiences. And again, those can be designed and those are owned functionally by very often HR or elements of it, OD, L&D, and so on. Then we get into the sort of slightly more blurred stuff, what we call everyday EX. This is less controllable, less manageable. This is where we rely on EX being baked really into the culture of the organization, being lived and breathed by managers through their behaviors each day, through the way that they interact with their teams, through the way that leaders speak and lead their organizations. So that is less owned functionally and more owned out there in the organization by the people that make the organization tick. And finally, building on that is the bit that no one really talks about at the moment, which is the mindset of employees themselves. Employees have a role to play in this. They bring themselves to work. They choose the roles that they apply for. The mindset that they bring to work very much is part of the EX mix as well. So really just to paint a picture there of the breadth of employee experience and what we're talking about. Next slide, please, Em. So just quickly, we thought it was very important to differentiate between the what, which is the overarching concept of employee experience, and the how, which is very much the profession of EX. So just quickly, an experience is any event, occurrence which leaves an impression on an individual. Okay, just think about that quickly. It makes you feel something. Experience is by its nature emotional. It's more hearts than it is heads. So if we sort of explode from there and think about employee experience, our definition, and there's many out there, but our definition is that it's every event, occurrence, or interaction between an employee and their employer which leaves an emotional impression on them. So it's very broad. And the professional practice, the professional practice of EX is the intentional design and facilitation of the entire employee-employer relationship to enable the employee to thrive and perform at their very best. Okay, so it's very much about that employee, that human-centeredness. And this then unlocks engagement. So engagement is very much the outcome of great experiences. It's the end to that. It's not the it's the other side of the same coin. And for us, engagement is about discretionary effort. And engagement, of course, then drives organizational success. So that's what we mean by EX. It's about influencing and shaping every interaction from the moment the employee first thinks about joining, before they've even become part of that organization, right the way through until long after they've left, but they're part of the alumni, they're still part of that, emotionally part of that organization. They have a stake in it. Okay, thanks, Em. Back to you, I think.
Just unmuting. There we go. Can you hear me now? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Cool. Okay, let's get to the archetypes then. This is the exciting bit. Well, I'm excited by it. Hopefully you will be too. So as we talk through the interviews we had with the 30+ practitioners we spoke to, some themes became really clear. And one of the themes was, as Lee said, it's like the Wild West out there, but a lot of people felt very overwhelmed with like, this is so broad. Where do I focus? Where do I really, where do I kind of put my attention? And as we talk through, it became clear there were a number of different kind of, I suppose, axes, if you like. And let's face it, everybody loves a 4-box grid, don't they? Or do they? I'm not quite sure. But, it felt right to kind of really differentiate on some of the key themes that were coming out. So first of all, we spoke to those people who are much more in that kind of design area. So they were thinking about this stuff and maybe not actually executing it or delivering it. And there are also those people who are kind of like that macro level, so big picture. They're thinking about the whole employee experience from, that life cycle piece from before people even join to long after they've left. And there are those people that were kind of much more in the micro area. So working with some really great L&D teams, for example, who were really focused on the learning experience. So we felt there was kind of some key ways to differentiate the focus area for EX practitioners based on those criteria. So are you operating at the big picture level, the macro level, or the micro level? Are you more on the sort of strategic design end, or are you more on the delivery end? And that enabled us to come up with the 4 archetypes, as we're calling them. And this is very much a starter for 10. So we really want you to have a look at the white paper we're sending out and give us your thoughts. Does it work for you or not? What would you add to it? Does it resonate or not? So first of all, we've got the EX Architect. I'm going to go through these in a little bit more detail in just a second. Then we've got the EX Planner. Then we've got the EX Designer. And then we've got the EX Builder. So what I'm going to do is take these one by one, explain what we mean by each of them. And we go into this in a lot more detail in the white paper. So you'll have all the detail that kind of behind the 4 archetypes. So the EX Architect. So this is that person who's kind of sitting at that kind of strategic level. They're thinking about the blueprint or the strategy. They're thinking big picture. What's the kind of experience we want our people to have when they join our organization? That's where their head's at. That's where their focus is at. They might not get involved in the weeds of designing kind of really specific experiences. They might not ever get anywhere near designing an induction experience, for example. They're thinking big picture. And why? They want to ensure the employee experience aligns with the company culture. So they're probably quite commercially focused. They're saying, if we get it right with our people and we enable and facilitate this experience, it's going to help us to attract talent, to improve our productivity, to sell more, to improve our reputation, whatever it might be. So very much operating at that big picture strategic end with those kind of senior stakeholders. The focus, as I said, it's on strategy, it's on big picture, it's organization-wide. They're thinking about the whole. And who might sit in this role? Well, it might be, a CHRO or an HRD. It might be a newly created role of EX director or people experience director. It might be a head of employee engagement. So the outcome we're looking for is, okay, we want to engage our people. We know that absolutely facilitates great business outcomes. And I know that if I'm looking after engagement, I'm only going to get that if we think about the experience we want our people to have. So they're already joining the dots between engagement as an outcome and the experience that drives that. So that's kind of what we heard from some of the practitioners we spoke to. And this might already be resonating some of you, it might not, but let's wait and see. Please feel free, by the way, to pop questions in the chat as I'm talking through these archetypes. Then we move to EX Planner. So that's that top right. So they're still kind of macro focused, but they're much more on delivery. So the planner are those people, those teams that take the blueprint and say, okay, so we're clear on the kind of experience we want our people to have at a big picture level and how we want that to drive engagement. And I need to translate that now into my functional area, because without a plan, there can be no deliveries. That's the big why for this. So I need to figure out, for example, if I'm sat as an EX planner and maybe I'm head of internal comms, or maybe I'm looking after OD, or maybe I'm looking after reward, I've got to translate that blueprint from the EX architect and think about how I deliver that into kind of my functional responsibility. So it's about guiding delivery across the organization and possibly overseeing others who are going to then implement that plan and maybe design specific interventions as well. So as I said, you know, functional heads such as IC, L&D, reward, maybe even heads of facilities or technology might feature in here. And then we move to that bottom, sorry, gone the wrong way. Then we move to the EX builder. So they are really looking at how they then make that happen. So they're actually building the experiences themselves. So they're kind of you know, bringing it to life, executing on that, building those experiences, making them happen. So they really are about that kind of front line of actually putting into practice all these great ideas and designs that the architects and the planners and the designers have come up with. So they might be, you know, they might be frontline managers, they might be functional specialists, all sorts of different kind of you know, specialisms in there. And I think we've not quite sure what's happened with the slides here, but I think we've missed one, but there should be an EX designer as well, but it's okay, I know this off by heart. The EX designer is that bottom left hand corner, who are really all about designing specific experiences. So they'll be looking at things like designing induction experiences. They'll be looking at you know, how to design sort of much more micro experiences as well. So that's really where they're focusing. So those are the 4 archetypes that I came up with. So be really interested to hear from the practitioners in just a second in terms of how these archetypes resonate with them. So I'm going to stop sharing actually. And while I'm doing that, Katie, if you could try and fix those slides so I can just flash up the EX designer. We're not quite sure what happened there. It's probably control issues, version control issues. But I'm going to go to the practitioners. So we got Emily and Alison unmuted. Are you there?
Hi. Yeah. Hi there.
Hello. Brilliant. So the first question that I've got for both of you, really interested to hear how you ended up in an EX role. So Emily, I'm going to come to you first. So what was your kind of journey into your EX role?
Yeah, so I didn't, you know, I started in HR about 16 years ago. So obviously, you know, I didn't have a game plan because EX was not on the agenda at that point. It wasn't, you know, something that anyone was talking about. But my background is predominantly generalist HR, working in a number of different industries, manufacturing and commercial drinks industry, and I've been in media working for News UK since 2014. But I've really always had a passion for development. So I was naturally starting to work more with learning and development teams, doing a lot in the coaching, management and leadership space. And actually, you know, News decided to take, you know, an employee experience stance to get really serious about it and created this new role last year. And for me, it just seemed like the natural next step. I felt like I've always had an employee experience mindset, and it was an opportunity to try and influence things more strategically. So it was a new role for News, a new role for me, and we're very much still, you know, getting in amongst that and working it out.
Brilliant. That's really interesting to hear that kind of, you know, the career path that led you to that. And Alison, I know yours is a little bit different. So Alison, how did you end up with that? I think your official role is EX Director at BAE Systems, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I ask myself how I got here every day, to be honest. My background, so I started at BAE straight from school, and that was a long time ago. And I actually started in the typing pool, and I was reflecting on this the other day. I think that is probably when my interest in employee experience started, even though I didn't know it. because I started as a typist as a direct intake, and the majority of other people joining the company were apprentices and graduates. And their experience was very different to mine, who, when I joined as a very, very, very junior member in the organisation. So I think about that a lot now. I progressed to being a PA, and then a job came up in comms and PR. So I joined the communication and PR function. At that point, my job was putting posters around site. I was in comms for about 15 years, and I progressed to be the communications director of one of our biggest sectors in the company. I worked across 7 different sites in the UK. I had a stint in America as well. So you get to see different cultures and different experiences being lived out. I then I'd had enough of comms, and I moved into project management, and I led an IT transformation program. I'll be honest, the implementation of the IT stuff didn't get me out of bed in the morning. It was the transformational journey and the culture change that the IT required. So I did that for a few years. The HR director of the sector saw what we were doing in the culture space, asked me to join HR, looked after talent management, D&I, performance management, and something called workplace climate. And I don't think we knew what workplace climate was, but it was an employee experience. And we were playing at it. And then the pandemic happened. And we learned really quickly the importance of employee experience. And then eventually they saw what we were doing in the sector, and they asked me and my team to go and do it at a BA systems level. So, sorry, quite a long journey.
I think it's really fascinating, because I think, you know, as you know, we talked to lots of people in this world, and we interviewed lots of people for this research, and just hearing the different journeys that people have taken to end up here, I think is super interesting. And the fact that actually there's no one right way to kind of, you know, end up with a career in EX. So I'm going to stick with you, Alice, and ask this question, and I'll come back to Emily. But as I said, you know, both BA Systems and you and your team, and Emily and her team are doing some really great work, really cutting edge stuff. So can you tell us a little bit about how the team's set up and how you're structured, and the sort of, you know, some of the sort of work you get involved with in BA Systems?
Yeah. So we sit in the head office HR team under somebody called the Chief Operating Officer, the HR Chief Operating Officer, which effectively is the engine room to make sure we integrate all the centres of excellence like talent, etc. And actually, one of the things that I'd love to hear people's views on is we're having a big debate at the moment if EX is a centre of expertise or an enabler to those centres of expertise. And I think it's a really good debate, and I'm torn, to be honest, because I think we should be a golden thread through all COEs, but there is power of being a COE because of the discipline. Yeah. So it's a really interesting debate on our EX journey. The way that we are organised as a team, there's 7 of us. Referring to your descriptions of the archetypes, definitely myself, I feel I'm in that architect space. And then within the team, we've got 2 focus areas. One is around gathering employee voice. So what are the experiences, and is there a gap between expectation and experience? And the other area is helping those, I think you called them planners. We call them EX custodians because they are custodians of the experience. It's about helping them design in a people-centered way.
Yeah.
So that's how we are set up in BA Systems, and we cover UK, KSA, and Australia. So it's quite a wide remit for us.
Yeah, no, I love it. I know obviously we worked with you for quite a while on this stuff, Alison, and I think for me, you are very much in that architect role. You're senior level, you're doing a lot of stakeholder management, and then I know with your team, they kind of like straddle a little bit of that, and there are, as you said, your EX custodians that are your planners. And then I know that we've worked with you on creating a community of practice, and we've upskilled them in EX design, so they have those design skills. They can go out and design specific experiences, and we've done some work on the exit experience. So I can really see this. You and your team had a huge influence on the way we've kind of taken this work. So I can see it really working as well. So thank you for sharing that. Emily, back to you. How's it structured in News UK, and what sort of work do you get involved with?
Yeah, so kind of some similarities, but slightly different as well. So and just to give you some sort of context around News UK, so we're a global media business. So we reach 40 million people every month through our products, and we've got sort of internationally famous brands like The Sun, The Times, The Sunday Times, Talk Sport, Virgin Radio, and now Talk TV. But we're a business rooted in journalism, and over the past few years we have had to really diversify as much as possible to reach audiences when and where they want us across all different channels, online, apps, websites, as well as our traditional TV, radio and newspapers. But what that means for me and my job is that we're in this constant state of having to diversify and change, and actually the skills that we need and the talent that we need, there's a huge need to attract and retain talent from a really wide range of disciplines. So our structure, so interesting hearing the debate around centre of expertise there was, I've got 3 centres of expertise underneath me. So talent acquisition, learning and development, and engagement. So those are the sort of 3 main areas. I report to the Chief People Officer, so we sit within the HR function. However, we try to get that golden thread across all of the other centres of expertise and the business-facing teams. So those are the direct teams, but I'd say through the project and design work and the work that we're doing, we're engaging a huge range of stakeholders, from all of the people that influence the intentional EX space, such as comms, health and safety, facilities, tech, etc. But really a big focus as well is our line managers and our leadership capability, and trying to influence that as much as we can, because as you've already described, that has such a huge impact on employee experience. So that's our setup at the moment in terms of the actual sort of remit that we've got.
Brilliant, thank you for that. I've got sort of 2 questions in one for you, and then I'll come back to Alison again. So while I'm asking this, anyone else that's on the call that wants to ask these 2 brilliant practitioners a question, now's your time. So what do you think, Emily, is your biggest challenge or challenges? And if there's one thing that you could like wave a magic wand and fix that would make your life easier, or whatever it might be, what would it be?
I think because the role is quite new for me and for News, and because like when I've tried to describe there, the sort of really fast-paced changing nature of the organisation, we really try to make things happen and make it happen quickly. But it's really hard when you're going into a new remit like this to decide what to go after in the EX space, and everybody has ideas and suggestions and wants to input, which is great, and you want to keep that enthusiasm. But really culturally, we're trying to look at for example, one of the projects we have at the moment is a big redesign of our whole onboarding process from an EX mindset point of view, and that sort of measure that experience. But you could be going after everything within that. So how do you actually prioritize, measure, influence? And the sort of side bit, the most important bit for that for me is those teams that we're building, the cross-functional project groups, that they're developing an EX mindset as we go, and learning from each project. So every one we've done, we do slightly differently again next time. So I think the sort of key challenges for me are, the capacity that we have and the size of the things that we want to go after, if that makes sense. And I think in terms of the second question around what would make a difference would be people developing an EX mindset, and that understanding of what it is. And people ask me all the time, what you're, head of EX, what does that actually mean? What do you do, internally and externally? And I think, as it grows and develops, it's, helping our leaders who, only have a certain amount of bandwidth to understand that and build that capacity. And I think then in turn, look at how we're measuring EX as well, because it's hard to find that move away from things like speed and efficiency through different functions within an organisation to actually start to measure experiences properly and what people's thoughts and feelings are around that. So I hope that answers your question.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Emily. Really appreciate that. And I think that mindset piece is fascinating. And I know, you know, part of the reason that, you know, yourself and Alison I hold up as kind of pioneers and doing great practices, you know, you both recognise early on that this wasn't a simple rebrand, that just being given the role of EX rather than HR previously wasn't just, you know, wasn't about carrying on doing what you'd always done. And you both recognised early on, we need to do something very different here. So, you know, absolutely get that. Alison, what about you? What are your kind of key challenges, and if you could wave a magic wand, what would you do?
Well, I don't know if it's a magic wand, but I think one of the biggest challenges we have in BAE Systems, we're a systems company, clue in the title, and we employ a lot of engineers who like structure, process, engineering and facts. And starting using a different F word, i.e. the feelings, is quite alien, and it's taking people on a journey of why understanding how people are feeling is important. So I think that's one of my biggest challenges. The way that we are approaching that is to combine data and feelings. And I think that is where the power comes in when you're trying to get senior stakeholders on your journey. And it's about that data evidence, but put it together with the voice of the employee. So you've got the two together. So that's one of our biggest challenges. And I think because we are early on this EX journey, that return on investment is really hard to describe to senior leaders. We have got some really strong stories, but I'm not sure we've got return on investment data. Yes. And that's challenging. Yet we will do. We absolutely will do.
You will.
But we're not there yet.
Thank you so much for that. Katie, have we got anything coming in from the chat? Any good comments or any comments? That'd be good. There can be interesting comments or provoking comments or challenging comments or questions for Alison and Emily.
We do. We have a question that's come through, but it's a good reminder, if anyone else wants to add some questions, just pop them in the chat and we can share those with either of the practitioners, or Emma or Lee can answer those for you. So the question that we've got through to start with, Alison's answered it a little bit from the BAE side already, comes from Sarah. So did either of you struggle to shift mindsets into employee experience at a senior level? I find that people are much more comfortable talking about employee engagement than experience. Experience seems to blow minds a bit. So Alison, thank you for your answer. I think you've wrapped that up beautifully already about ROI and getting some stats and mixing the two things from sort of feelings and data. I just wanted to come to Emily to see if you had anything to add to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would agree with that. I think it is around trying to bring as much data to the conversation as possible and showing how, you know, how it's influencing things at a huge level. I think for us as well, we, you know, some of the disciplines that we have to recruit for are some of the most challenging sort of talent pools that there are. And I think being able to weave into the actual real life challenges with the senior leaders, you know, that they are facing within their functions, and how employee experience can influence and actually attract and retain and over and above, you know, reward, has been a huge influence as well for us.
Thank you. Thanks, Emily. Another question. So this one comes from Sam. One of our priority areas in our new EX team is to develop a voice listening strategy, so we can really understand people's experience at different stages of the life cycle. What's been your approach or challenges to developing a strategy and bringing senior leaders on that journey? Should we come to Alison? Do you want to kick that off?
I describe our approach as experimental at the moment. We launched something last year called the birthday survey, which was a bit of an experiment where we went out every month, and if it was your birthday present was to receive a survey from us. And what we managed to do is split that data by life cycle. So we could understand how our early careers were feeling. We could understand how people who were edging retirement were feeling. So we tried our best to split the data by life cycle. We learned a lot from that experiment, and we move into a new era. I'd say in 2023, we are adopting Qualtrics, which is a well-known surveying tool, which will allow us to interrogate the data better. We're also going to move to a quarterly basis because monthly was too often. With that, so we'll do the survey, but we're also gathering groups together on a regular basis to ask them about their experiences, and we're going to shift to life cycle groups. So we will bring together early careers, we will bring people who are reboarding after maternity leave or long-term sick to think about what their experiences are. So again, we're experimenting, but we are finding real power of taking a life cycle approach rather than a role-based approach. And I genuinely think that's been one of my biggest mind shifts over the last 12 months, to take that life cycle approach rather than just taking a role-based approach in listening.
Brilliant, thank you, Alison. I'm conscious of time. We've got a little bit more to share with you on strengths and skills, so I'm going to move it on. I'm going to go back to my slides if that's okay. Obviously we could all talk about, well, I could talk about this for hours, to be honest with you. Let's just bring back the slides. I have now, I've got the right PowerPoint here, so apologies everybody, it's probably me not opening the right version. So yeah, we're all about being human here. There's a great illustration of that today. Here is the EX designer I mentioned earlier. So that was that bottom left archetype. So the designers are very specifically like using design skills to focus on designing specific experiences. So yeah, as I said, they're very much taking a human-centered design, which is one of the big shifts when it comes to employee experience. So thinking about how does this experience feel from the viewpoint of the person we're designing for. So we just did a great piece of work with the client recently where we were redesigning the overseas new joiner experience, and we got those people in a room that had just joined that company from overseas the last few months, and we worked on understanding that experience from their point of view. So they're very much at the more micro end and very much thinking about what could this experience look like, and then those designs get passed on to the builders to actually make it happen. So hopefully that makes sense and I haven't confused anybody, and it's all in the white paper as well. So what I want to do now is just move on. I'm going to go back to Lee and ask Lee just to bring to life some of the kind of core strengths and skills that we heard from the research were present when practitioners were kind of doing really great work. So over to Lee to talk through those.
Thank you, Emma. So I'll keep this relatively brief. As Emma said, there's lots of detail on this. It makes up a big part of the white paper that we've published. So there's detailed explanations for each of these strengths and indeed skills, but we'll just go through them very quickly now. So first and foremost, we've differentiated between those two. So strengths are abilities which come naturally to someone. They're almost part of your DNA or your personality, whereas skills, on the other hand, are something that people learn, something they acquire and they get better at over time. So just keep those two sort of differences in mind as we go through this. So what we've identified is a set of core strengths and core skills that are required across any EX related role, whether you're a designer, an architect, a builder, wherever you sit in that model. These are the strengths and skill sets that you're going to need. And then for each of the individual roles, so each of those four roles that Emma described, we've then got specific strengths and specific skills that you need to dial up or down depending on where you sit. So core EX strengths, no surprises at all that empathy is our kind of true north there on the compass, if you like, the strengths compass. The ability to get into someone's shoes, to see the world, the organization through their lens is absolutely critical to employee experience. Emma and I, along with others, were at the Qualtrics event in London yesterday, and they talked a lot about empathy and actually have named empathy as their big overarching theme for this year. And we agree 100% with that. You know, without empathy, without that ability, you really can't do an EX centered role. So that is absolutely the key starting point. Others, of course, curiosity, courage, resilience. You know, it's tough for practitioners, as we've heard. You know, you're one of the questions there asked about bringing leaders along on the journey. I mean, they're skeptical about this stuff, talking about emotion and things like that in a business setting is difficult. So you have to be able to roll with the punches, and I think have quite thick skin. Drive, just to pull out one more, you know, this is about making things happen against you know, difficult context, a difficult backdrop, driving things forward and actually executing and making things happen. But as I say, we'll go into more detail in those within the white paper, and be great to get your thoughts on those. So over the page, please, Em. So skills, again, these are learned. These can be developed and honed and learned through experience and practice over time. Again, true north here, I think for us starts with being able to have the commercial conversation, business acumen, understanding the business, what makes the organization tick, how it makes its money, what challenges, strategic challenges it's facing. You know, that's the language that we need to be talking in order for leaders to give us their support, and in order for leaders to give us the budgets and everything else that we need to do what we need to do within EX. So business acumen absolutely at the top of this. Analytics, metrics and measurement kind of go hand in hand. So the ability to understand and interpret data, you know, for many organizations, it's all about data. Actually, when, you know, you talk about a listening strategy, most organizations' listening strategies are all about a survey and data, the data that comes from that survey. A true listening strategy is, of course, much more than that. As we heard from Alison, it's the qualitative stuff, the conversations. It's what managers see and hear every day. It's 1,000,001 things, not just a survey, but the metrics are important. And what gets measured gets done. It is the language of business. So we need to really bake measurement, analytics and metrics into everything we do within the organization. A lot of these are fairly self-evident, trust building, you know, as in many ways a parallel with the internal comms profession. We need to be within EX, we need to be trusted advisors, you know, not just the experts dispensing medicine and expertise, but actually people who can listen, can interpret what the leaders are saying and respond to that earn that trust and build that trust. Communication skills, again, absolutely evident, stakeholder management and so on. So there's lots of detail, as I say, in the white paper itself. I won't spend any longer on those. Keen to get back to the conversation, Emma, and hear your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Lee said, you know, what you'll see in the white paper is that each of the archetypes, well, all of the archetypes have the core strengths and skills, but then there are additional strengths and skills depending on where you're sitting. So, for example, just looking at my list here, if you're a planner, you know, for those people in those kind of EX planner roles, and things like project management was actually really critical. If you're in that design role, then absolutely innovation, design thinking skills would come in really handy. So you'll be able to see what else is in there. And as I said, it's not a finished, it's not kind of, you know, done and dusted product or done and dusted kind of piece of research. We want to kind of keep adding to it. So the more we can get practitioners like yourself involved in the conversation, the better. So can't wait to hear what you think about it. So I think we've got a few minutes left for any questions that you might have. And while you're typing them in, or if you want to unmute your mic, I'll just kind of show my last slide and say, in terms of next steps, we've got the full report to share with you. So have a read and let us know what you think. We really want to kind of get feedback on that. We are going to be developing a supporting diagnostic tool as well, so you can figure out where you think you sit, and maybe where your strengths are, where you need to develop yourself. The learning content we're developing for the EX space will be linked to those archetypes. So, you know, the architect kind of learning content will be much more kind of strategic, big picture, whereas the EX designer will be much more like, how do I design a really great specific experience? And obviously we're going to be launching the EX space in the next few months, and I really hope that you'll get involved and let us know what you think. Any questions though, Katie, coming through on the chat, or anyone want to unmute their mic? Got anything from anybody?
I've got a question here from Ryan. Are EX folks partnering up with their marketing and CX, UX colleagues to share notes? Because contexts aren't fully equivalent, but practices have some kinship, as do struggles for investment and relevance.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I mean, at the Qualtrics conference yesterday, they are all about joining up CX and EX. And we've said for a long time that CX is kind of like 20 years, if not more, ahead of where EX is. And always resonated with me that someone did a great piece for the book that I wrote with Belinda, talking about how when customer experience folks need to speak to their customer, it's quite a painful process sometimes to actually get out and speak to the customer, or, get feedback from the customer. Whereas we've got no excuse internally, because our customers, we work with them day in, day out. So I think it's a really good, kind of call to arms really to join up those areas. And we talk about EX as being multidisciplinary, and absolutely speaking to marketing, speaking to CX, it's always going to benefit, I think, the practice. I haven't really seen much evidence of that, but would love to hear from you. And Leanne, you've got any thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely 100% we need to partner with those folk as well. I mentioned business acumen, commercial acumen. Talking the language of the business is absolutely critical to the maturing of this as a distinct discipline. And part of that actually is showing the value chain from what we do within the employee experience space, and how that impacts the organization. And Qualtrics, again, yesterday, have done a lot of work in that area to show that if you enhance engagement over here, it actually drives revenue over here, lowers costs, all sorts of things like that. And actually, only by talking to those more commercially facing, customer facing functions can we really demonstrate that value chain and that value add.
I see we've got a comment coming in saying that, so look, I can't quite get to it quickly enough. Can you read that, Katie? Someone saying
there's another question.
No, Christina was saying that they've been partnering with UX and CX, which is brilliant. So I would love to hear more about that, Christina. Get in touch. We would love to hear that. That'd be brilliant. I think you're quite unusual, though, is what I'm saying, because marketing are light years ahead in terms of personalization, understanding audiences, all that good stuff, human-centered approach, compared to people in the people side of the business. So I'd love to hear more about that if you can let us know. Sorry, another question, Katie, just quickly before you finish. We're almost at time, so
no worries. Last question then comes from Trina. Great to see understanding of change in there. How would you say that change management and EX kind of fit and work together?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we're figuring that out. I mean, clearly designing a great experience and delivering on that is going to be about change, right? So there's a kind of we talk about the kind of the sort of I guess the process side of change, which is, Lee always says, the Prince 2. We're not really talking about that. We're talking about more of the psychology of change and understanding people's needs, emotions, and Alison mentioned the F word, feelings. Having to get really comfortable with that side of change is what we're talking about here. That how do you take people on a change journey? And that works at so many levels when you're working with EX, because it might be you're operating at a kind of an EX architect level where you've got to take your senior peers on a change change for them to just understand this is not a simple rebrand of HR, and that you've got to do something differently. Or it might be actually taking, you might be in a kind of a planner or a builder, and you're trying to take perhaps a very sort of, stuck in the mud teams who have always done it this way to think about a very new and different way of doing these things. So it operates at so many different levels, but understanding how people change and what what helps people to, you know, adopt and to change, you know, looking at needs and motivations and feelings is going to be helpful no matter which of those archetypes you're operating in. You're going to use kind of that knowledge of change. So Lee, I'm sure you've got something to add to that.
Well, yeah, just briefly. I mean, you know, it's still today in 2023, 80% plus of change programs fail to deliver the benefits they set out to achieve. And the reason they fail, in my mind, is because they're not human focused. They're done in a very mechanistic, top-down way. Leandro Herrera used to talk about tsunami change. You know, as organizations, we throw change out there at people and hope that it sort of washes over them. And actually change doesn't work like that. It's much more of a micro thing, and it starts with small behaviors being replicated over time. It's all about the human element. So to me, EX and the EX mindset is absolutely key to making change, moving from change, which fails, to genuine transformation inside organizations.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thanks for that. As I said, I could talk about this all day, but you know, we've all got other meetings to get to. So I just want to say a huge thank you to those of you that have joined us today. I say it's the first of our EX Space webinars. So hopefully we'll remember this in years to come and say, remember that first webinar when Emma showed the wrong slides? It's all good though. Enjoy the white paper. Please get in touch because we really want to hear what you think about this. And we are going to be, you know, carrying on the research. This isn't the end. This is just the beginning of the conversation. So let us know what you think. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday and take care, and hopefully see you all soon. So thank you. And
thanks
bye.
everyone. Take care.